Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. Welcome to the Shout Show, the SOS, with me, your host, Preacher Moss. I had a topic. Of course, I always have a topic. Of course, it was about COVID-19 making a comeback, which had to deal so much with the national health crisis, or if you will, the international health crisis that we're dealing with. But now we're dealing with yet another shooting here not here, but in Atlanta. Mr. Rayshard Brooks and I've seen the footage. Let's be real clear. I've seen the footage. I haven't seen all of it, so I don't want to give anything out of context. What I know is that the police chief of Atlanta has resigned, and the officers involved in the shooting have been fired. And I really do want to stick with this idea of COVID-19, if you will. And the reason I'm saying that because it seems like as a country, as a community, we've really gotten in a very weird space. Let me give my shout outs to Sister Layla. That's all like a big sister. It seems like we've gotten in a weird space, and I didn't want to attribute it to COVID. I was on a call today with a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, Sakai Sandford, and we were talking about defund the police, the idea of defunding the police, and we went this whole systematic argument about you can't defund the police because they don't fund themselves. And we talked about that whole idea of separation, that whole idea of getting ourselves out of unhealthy situations. And I said, in a manner of speaking, I said, it's almost like a COVID, if you will. It's almost like a COVID continuum, if you will. Because what people are not talking about with all the protests, and not riots, but peaceful protests, all of particular political maneuvering is that we've gotten ourselves into a place whereby it's almost at like the beginning of the Trump presidency, whereby people did not feel safe with this president. And with this whole COVID thing, we're at a point now where we're seeing spikes. Now, spikes is like, something goes up and it goes back down, but this is a little different because it's going up. And people are predicting these models now. And I want all of us to pay attention to how people handle crisis. In this particular situation, when we talk about COVID, there was a time not too long ago, I would say less than 2 weeks ago, where the White House leadership, if you will, spoke out and said at one point in time that the number of projected dead from COVID or COVID-related illnesses was 60,000. And once it got above 60,000, there were no more press releases. There were no more talks, if you will, about potential deaths. There's no health official out there on their own or as a part of the government, if you will, talking about COVID deaths. And there's something to be said about this. And what I would like to say about it is that people have found a prescription, if you will. Let me say this, a prescription to deal with COVID in the way that they deal with scenarios that affect people disproportionately. And when you say disproportionately, it's not necessarily a Black thing or Latino thing, it's a poor thing, but it is a scenario where you have a visual understanding that this group of people is being affected more so than this group of people over here. Now, I would like to lay this thing out, if you will. You have a situation scenario whereby, as much as we have protests and things like that, and people are doing, thank you very much, very peaceful protests, we have leadership that's absent. And when I say this leadership is absent, I'm going to give you the quotients or the characteristics of missing leadership. When something is wrong, our leadership can't say, this is wrong. When something needs to be repaired, we can't say, this is how you do it. When something needs redemption, we can't say, I'm sorry. And the last one is really interesting. It's speaking to the future, if you will. A lot of times, before I was a comedian, as you guys know, I was a school teacher. And one of the hardest things you could ever do, but probably one of the most fulfilling things you could ever do, is when you made a mistake in class with a student, you immediately will go to that student and say, either in class or after class, you know what, let me apologize. I was wrong. we have leadership, and in many regards on both sides now, that position themselves whereby the ability, if you will, the ability to say I'm wrong is something parallel to what we have now. You see, the issue with COVID-19, in many regards, you can't blame COVID-19. You can blame how people handled it. But the issue is when people try to find positioning, if you will, I'm trying to find a situation or scenario that gives me leverage or advantage over you. What you usually have in terms of the welfare of the people is a defective product. We are now, I don't know how many days into COVID-19, to the point where people have deceived themselves into thinking that they know more about a disease than the disease itself. The disease engineers itself. People, if you are any kind of scientist or beginning scientist, all of us know there's a difference between a bacteria and a virus. The difference between a bacteria and a virus is a bacteria is a living thing. Thus, you can use antibiotics. A virus requires a host. And I'm going to say this and be very, very clear. Some of the policies require a human host. So if you're going to, in many regards, raise dissension amongst people, if you're going to give ill intention, it requires a host. So while we're talking about the physical COVID, if you will, let me give a shout out to Sister Reed. Anybody that's out there that wants to give a shout out, this is the shout out show, the SOS. Hit me in the box in the comment section. I'm going to throw you up because I like to just roll while I'm talking along. There is an undergirding about COVID-like behavior. COVID-like behavior, meaning that we are also in a novel situation in terms of human interaction. Per se, I went to my barber yesterday. I needed a haircut. I'm allowed to go to my barber. I went to my barber, but I went with precautions. I went with a mask. Now, I'm not saying I'm a hypochondriac or anything like that, but in my position as an entrepreneur, I can't afford to be sick because if I get sick, nobody else works for me. Thus, when I went to the barbershop, African-American barbershop, let's be very, very clear, they do great hair, I get good haircuts. Here was the problem. When I walked up on the wall, you could see the progression, if you will, of how people had fooled themselves into thinking that COVID wasn't what it was. Let me explain. When I walked to the barbershop, out on the outside window, they had 3 signs. Here are the signs. The first sign said, no mask, no service. The next sign said, no mask, no service. The last sign said, mask, $2. Okay, I got you, security, profitability. I got it. That amused me. I thought it was funny. What was not funny was when I got into the shop, nobody was wearing a mask. They were wearing gloves, but they weren't wearing masks. They had reduced the amount of people in the main space. And then when you got into the lobby, it was 6 feet and all of that. But that was not the point. I'm saying that at a black barbershop, an African-American barbershop, and my barber, good brother, but he had some health issues. I'm thinking at least you should be able to get in and protect yourself. One of the issues of him getting in and protect himself is it's a misnomer because he said I had to get in here to save my business, to save my family. I get that. Now, my point is here. The interesting thing about COVID is we still haven't gotten any cure. We've heard a lot of things about vaccinations and things of that. But let's be honest. The facts are beginning to line up that we don't know what in the world we're talking about because the disease is going to take its time. Just the idea of a disease that attacks immune systems is a very, 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 it's a classic design. Now, bear with me, people. You know me. I look at things conceptually. When I say look at things conceptually, I'm asking you to also look at things conceptually. I'm not saying we're going to be conspiracy theorists, but let's take information and put it next to one another. Per se, I'm a comedian. People go, you tell jokes. No, I don't tell jokes. I develop concepts and narratives come out of the concepts. Because if you tell a joke is like there's a house and there's a doorknob. A joke is the doorknob. A concept is the house. So I'm beginning to think that this whole thing about COVID now is getting a little back. Okay, brother, I'm gonna give you some love right there. Uh, Black seed oil is the cure, inshallah. Okay, I'm gonna take that from you, brother Omar. Thank you. But brother Omar, there's some things that we need to talk about that black seed is not going to cure. The idea now that our healthcare, if you will, has now been put into place of an election. When I say that COVID is making a comeback, it's making a political comeback. If you paid attention, in the state of Georgia, you've had two things. One, the murder of another African American. I won't say he was unarmed, he had a taser, but for the most part, he was running away. They killed him. Okay, that's number one. And number two, there was a mess, if you will, in the state of Georgia around their election. People beginning to say that November is going to be a disaster in terms of an election. That's right. There you go. Got to put on that mask. But you are beginning to look at the strategic implementation of COVID reality. A couple things happen in terms of big festivals. We keep hearing about a vaccination. The original idea about a vaccination was going to be at least 18 months. I still believe that because my father works at NIH. And I asked him, what's the protocol of bringing a vaccination to the masses? And he says, basically, you have people running trials. And when they find something, they have to do human trials. And the reason why they can't do it quickly because you're still dealing with the balance of human life, right? So you just can't jab people, give them a pill, things like that. They've loosened up some things so you can do the trials faster, but they still have to be held safely. Now, the idea of a COVID environment, and let me frame this. We're going into a COVID-19 summer. I do believe that the virus will get worse because it's a virus. Think about the flu. What's the worst thing you can have during the summer, brothers and sisters? You guessed it. A summer cold, or worse, a summer flu. And the idea of people going out all of a sudden because someone said it's okay is a mind trick, if you will. Again, this is a situation, a scenario where people have placed value in systems and people who are not reliable. We're prone, if you will, to doing irrational acts following from irrational people. We all know that the best way to handle COVID-19 is to isolate yourself away from the potential situations where you could get it. Now, the lines are blurred. George Floyd showed me something. In his situation, in his scenario, many of us went outside of ourselves, our natural rational selves, our excellent minds, and we gave over to emotion. And we had these protests. And protests is fine, but were they safe? Because see, now what's going to happen, I believe, in the second space of COVID is now it attaches to our politics. And when I say it attaches to our politics, brothers and sisters, it means that it becomes a political football that's going to be kicked all over the place. Now, I'm giving you a comedy rendition of this thing. Talking about COVID right now to a politician is something akin to having an argument with a man pumping gas and smoking a cigarette. We may be talking, but I'm thinking this outcome is not going to be good. That's number one. Number two is we're about to enter another aspect of COVID economy. Brothers and sisters, whatever you do, how much you work, save your money. Because the government, at some point in time, can't keep printing money. At some point in time, you have to tell the people the truth about what something actually costs. Oftentimes in the bidding game or negotiation, you go for the lowest price. The lowest price in the United States was a stimulus check. $1,200 for individuals, all the way up to $2,400, $500 for children. But think about this. If you're out of work for 6 months, how much or how value is that stimulus check? Because we now run the scope of possibly, brothers and sisters, having to shut the entire thing down. I want to give shout outs to my grandmother and my mother and my dad, because when I got sick as a kid, they'd say, "Hey boy, sit your butt down and lay down." You know why? It wasn't so much about me getting healthy, but they didn't want to get sick because mom and dad didn't have leave like that. They had to go out and work and provide. And my job, and in some regards, think about this. My job in some regards was to stay healthy, which allowed them to go out and earn a living. We're not in that space right now. With the unemployment numbers that we have right now, we will enter the fall with some of the highest unemployment numbers potentially since we've been out there since the Great Depression. Why is this important? Because at this situation and scenario, we find ourselves in that revolving door. Right now, we're having arguments about George Floyd, police, 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 police. Here's the deal. Police are affected by COVID-19 too. Let me tell you why. Because when people were not on the street and people weren't out in the clubs and people weren't out doing crime and crime is at massively low levels, the question or the viability of police work was we don't need it as much. Anybody who knows about police work is this. Police, God bless their soul, they're there to they're there to handle and protect the economic interests of big business. Of course, they're there to protect and serve, but let's go back to the fact that the original aspect of police force was slave patrols. We all know this. I'm not telling you anything different, but I'm giving it to you in a COVID-19 prose, and I'm updating it because I don't want us to lose focus on the fact that we now have a situation where things are done with mirrors, smoke and mirrors. The new COVID-19, if you will, or I would say the cure for COVID-19 right now, is being able to secure the best information about your own health that you can get. Before there's a rush to get your temperature taken, before there's a rush for swabs in your mouth, figure out the best health that you can be in. Go to your refrigerators, brothers and sisters, and look in there and see, do you have enough fruit? Do you have enough greens? Do you have enough water? Because these are the new aspects of economy with COVID. Self-care and being able to maintain your health. Why do I say maintain your health? Because it's not just your health, it's the health of your family. I'm not talking about just your physical health, but your mental health. We all know, all of us, especially adults, the pain and anguish it is to see a loved one, particularly a parent, dealing with a crisis or dealing with some type of health disparity and being there for them, but you can't do anything. Well, we're almost at that point because COVID did something that nothing had ever been able to do before, even the wars. COVID totally framed mobility. It totally framed mobility. So it didn't matter how much money you had or how big your house was. Everybody was afraid to go outside because of COVID, right? Now we have a situation where people think we have remedied COVID because we went out and did what we wanted to do. Is it any surprise that there's a spike? No. I'll tell you when I knew it was a spike, and many of you may disagree or actually agree with me. I didn't look at the urban areas in terms of COVID. Because they had a little thing, I think, well, Johns Hopkins has a whole thing, and it lays out the spread of COVID all over the United States. It's very accurate. I would say, take a look at it because it gives you the amount of infections, the amount of deaths, and then the rates on it. But here's the thing that was really, really interesting. I took time and spent a little bit of energy trying to look at the spread of COVID in rural areas. When I say rural areas, I mean out in the farms, places like that. And what was happening was the spread of COVID was rampant out there once it got started. And that, because it's a rampant situation, a lot of the healthcare facilities, they couldn't manage for COVID. Which means you now have a crisis in the heart of America, in the Southwest, and spaces like that, and we can't handle it. So we see some of the smaller cities that are quote unquote smaller metropolitan cities, Birmingham, parts of Florida. You have that scenario. And the comeback of COVID this time is a political agenda. I don't hear any talk about medicine. I don't hear any talk about cures. I don't hear any talk about social distancing. It's been a while since I heard about wash your hands. stay out of people's faces, stay in your house, protect your family, protect your health. We're not hearing that now because the idea is to make COVID or illness, if you will, or unnecessary death, if you will, acceptable. You see, this was a conversation that was had a little while ago, and you have to remember these conversations that people would say things like, "Well, you got to go sometime," when they were talking about COVID deaths. You're going to die anyway. Yeah, that's cool, but I ain't trying to die with you. And it becomes this weird type of normalcy because we're talking about COVID right now, but there's not the sense of urgency that it won't shut down our economy because people just don't care. I'm going to go to my business. It's my business. But on the way to the business, you stop and you talk to 3 or 4 people that you could potentially infect. The new COVID economy is weird because it lacks empathy. The return of COVID-19 now is missing empathy. It's missing understanding. We've gone through a period where family traditions have been broken because you can't go see grandma, you can't go see grandpa, the aunties, the uncles. The whole idea, like I talk about, the gentle Sundays, that whole idea of getting together on a Sunday, sitting on the porch and having some sweet tea is out of the window. We are now in a space where we live by bad decisions. And when I say bad decisions, I don't just mean bad decisions, but I mean, I want to qualify that. Consistently bad decisions and qualitatively bad decisions. I could be, wrong. I could be wrong as wrong, but I could be right. And as we begin to close out a little bit, there's certain things I want us to remember. Everybody in our community has a quality of life. And that quality of life is not determined by your neighbor. Your quality of life has a lot to do with what? The community around you. Okay, we got some cures coming in here. Water, citrus, vegetable. Okay, there you go. All right, black seeds in there again. Just in case it all goes bad for me, people, when I'm laid up on a respirator, don't let them doctors talk to me or touch me. What y'all do is go to the corner store, and I want you to get a massive bottle of Vicks and rub it all over my body. I bet I'll be well, and everybody else in that ward will get up and feel better too. Okay, let me stick to the point, if you will. The idea of medicine right now is under investigation because I'm beginning to see the trends, if you will, and doing the homework or the metrics, if you will, about who are our pharmacies and who are the people that develop medicines, and if you know, how come you couldn't do anything about it? Now, all of these things are funny because they're not funny. I don't mean funny like haha. I mean funny like, man, that's peculiar. All about nuance, brothers and sisters. But I think we're in a particular situation whereby we have to look to how we protect the new generation, the next generation, the children and the youth. I hate to say it. They're talking about potentially 200,000 deaths by August the 1st, and nobody's really saying 200,000 deaths by August the 1st. We're still talking about jobs. We're still talking about, I don't want to shelter at home. We're talking about my business. We're talking about politics. But we're talking about a loss of potential. And that potential is our youth. Because our youth are looking at us. I earlier in a couple one of the shows, how you doing, brother? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, stay safe, brothers and sisters. My masjid has not opened up yet. The imam does the khutbah, and they might have 1 or 2 people in to make it an official Juma, but it hasn't opened up yet. And one of the things that's really interesting because they had to realize we can't bring people into the masjid because a lot of our fellowship, a lot of our membership are older people. We can't expose them. Now that's prophetic. That is a prophetic understanding and a prophetic tradition. But what happens when people go beyond that? I literally said that we are experiencing the growth of leaderless organizations. At the same time, we're experiencing the decline of leaderless leadership, if you will. Try that 3 times. Leaderless leadership, leaderless leadership, leaderless leadership. Okay, I did it 3 times. It's not as tough as I thought it would be. But my point being, we're now in a crisis era because during the summer, people don't want to say this, but during the summer, I believe that germs are a lot more apparent during the summer. In the cold, germs die, but in the heat, sweat, things like that, aerosols, they carry over a lot more. And I'm worried because the empathy involved with this reoccurrence or this comeback of COVID is the fact that we haven't learned anything. You see, the first COVID, we all sat up and learned because we didn't know what it was. We sat up, we listened, and we protected ourselves because we didn't know what it was. This particular term with COVID, we're all sitting up and we're doing the same thing, except for we're not reacting the same way. Not because we don't know what COVID is, but more important because we don't know who we are, which is one of the most damaging effects of COVID-19. We've lost touch with who we are. Now, as I close out, brothers and sisters, I want to ask everybody, please, for the sake of yourself, your family, your neighborhood, your community, do the smart things. Please, do the smart things. Social distance, put your mask on. That's it. I'm not asking the irrational. I'm asking the most rational thing in the world. I'm giving you logic. As Sister Satana said, behaviors haven't changed. Yeah. Well, they haven't. We're still the most arrogant people in the world. Even with a disease that's killed over 115,000 people, well on its way, projected to kill over 200,000, we still believe that we got the answer. It could be that whole thing that we're America, we're exceptional. Nah, there's no excuse. And when you get into that space and our leaders say, no, it won't happen to us, believe me, it's already happened to you. So I'm about to sign off, man. I thought this was going to be a really quiet show, and I want to thank everybody for signing up on the Shout Out Show. I want to make this something proud. I want to give you a special shout out on June 19th. Our first guest will be Imam Zaid Shaker. I got a funny story about Juneteenth. Then I'm going to go. And then I'm going to go because I feel like I owe you guys a little funny story. Years ago, I had a show in San Diego. One of my friends was down there. She was a nurse, and she was like, you should come down and do some comedy. And they brought me down to do some comedy, like no money. But I was like, all right, I'm a struggling comedian in California. I'm going to go ahead and make it happen. What's going on, mama, son? Assalamu alaikum. And Ahmed Khatib, little brother, Ree, big little sister. All right, let me get back to this story. So every once in a while, you'll show up to work. You'll do a show or something. It might be you're doing some consulting or whatever, or just walk in a space where you've been invited, and the people around you they're not feeling you. They don't like you. So basically, I was supposed to MC this event for Juneteenth, and the guy was really disrespectful to me. I don't know what was going on, but he's real disrespectful to me, and I'm trying to hold it together. I'm a young comic, and my friends like, don't worry about it, he's all that together. I'm gonna show you how God works. I didn't say anything to this gentleman. He was very rude, disrespectful. I wanted to put hands on him, but I didn't. But this guy knew so much. He knew so much. I'm this, I'm that, and I'm not one of those people. Brothers and sisters, I'm not really care. I don't worry about your status, okay? Whatever God made you, he made you. I'm good with that. So this guy, he was a rather large fellow. And he had this whole idea that nobody could wear a Juneteenth T-shirt, a hoodie, basically, unless he wore it first. So he made everybody not put on their shirts. And he paraded around this whole event. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And people were laughing. And he look at me, look at me. People were laughing. I looked at him. I burst out laughing. So the show starts. And he comes up. He introduces me. Probably one of the worst intros I had. I think his intro was like, yeah, I don't know if he's funny. We just got him for free. Preacher Moses. So, I'm hot, right? And I could have been nice. This might have been a pre-COVID moment. But I remember walking up and I started laughing at him. I brought the brother out. I said, I don't know, we're off to a bad start, but I want everybody to see that we work together. Everybody bust out laughing, just laughing louder. This guy is like, the audience is feeling me. He didn't know that they ordered 500 shirts for Juneteenth that were misspelled. The N wasn't there. So it wasn't Juneteenth. It was Juneteenth. Enjoy your Saturday.